Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Mysterious Idol X Alter, aka MIXA. She's going to be our welfare for, again, Grail Live that'll be coming out here soon. We just covered Miss Crane the other day. If you guys want to see a analysis on her, definitely go check that video out. But this one's going to be about our welfare, and she is an AoE 4-star quick foreigner. And I've seen a lot of people say like, hey, she's really good, she does a lot of damage, but I've also seen people in the same breath say she can't loop. And we actually kind of covered this in the same breath as Hokusai, where some people feel like Hokusai can't loop. They're wrong. In fact, I even got several people basically making such a claim when I made the video about Hokusai, saying like, yeah, she can't loop, because that was basically the title that I used, was can she loop. If they had watched the video, they'd have realized that she can, and that's kind of the entire point that I'm going to make here with this, is so can MIXA. It's not very easy, it's not the best of setups, but I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about that, and I actually had someone run some numbers for me here, just so that we can actually have something concrete. Now, again, let's start out though by looking at her actual kit, just so that you guys understand. So her attack to begin with here is at about 9,000. That's not the strongest attack power in the game amongst 4-stars by any means. We do have some units that even reach 10k in the 4-star category. But I've often said, and I still kind of stand by this, that anyone that's like 9k and up for a 4-star, they're doing pretty okay. That's a really decent number for them. Again, similarly here, she's got 12.3k HP. That's still reasonably thick. It's not anemic. It's not bad or anything like that. And given the fact that she is an extra class, doubly so the one that actually resists berserkers, this means that you're not going to be facing too many actually effective units. The only things you have to watch out for as a foreigner are other foreigners and alter egos. So as long as you're not going up against one of the two of them, you're going to be perfectly fine. If you are going up against another foreigner, just, try to protect her as much as you can. Now, looking at her kit here, she is star attributed. Again, she has 153 here star absorption. That is pretty normal for foreigners. They're pretty decently high in star absorption, kind of like archers. They're not going to be the highest, but they are good in that regard. And then again, basically 15% star gen here as well. So she's not going to be bad. Doubly so since she's a very quick focused unit here. I think you guys will see she'll be decently fine at generating stars for you. Her NP charge attack rate here is 0.9. That's actually really high. And there's definitely going to be a reason for this. And this is why I've often said, don't judge the book by its cover. Don't judge it based off just the one stat. A unit is their entire kit and the summation of that. So if this seems really high to you, remember that she is quick and her NP doesn't have the highest hit count. So that's one of the reasons why this is a thing. Now, similarly here, she has a 3%, which is average charge on getting hit. And then 6.7% death rate's actually fairly low. So that's pretty nice. On top of that, she is neutral good, which may be surprising to some of you since she is a spinoff of MHXA. And then she is female gender. She is traded as an Arthur face, a dragon, existence outside the domain, hominide, servant, humanoid, sovereign, aka king, a round table knight, saber face, and again, just a normal servant. Looking at her overall cards here, again, she does have double buster. She has double quick. That is something I'm going to really like to see here, especially now that we have Summer Scotty. Again, you guys know that Summer Scotty helps out with both buffing quick and buffing buster crit. So having two of each of these is a decently balanced deck. And again, if you're not going to have triple quick as a quick unit, then having an additional buster card now, given that support allocation, is decently good. So I do really like that in that regard. All of her hit counts are average or higher in the case of her quick and buster cards being 4 each. So they're one above the average, and that's really good in that regard. We don't really have any concerns with card performance per se in that, other than, again, just having the one arts card can definitely mean that you're not going to have the greatest of NP generation. But again, I don't think we're going to be super concerned about that. You'll see why in a minute. So right here, with her first skill here, she gets quick and buster performance 3 times 3 turns. Now, I've often said I am not a fan of anything that is times limited. This to me is a very archaic way of doing things. It's something that they use to limit a lot of the lesser rarities, but then they, in a weird way, apply it even to our SSRs, even to our 5 stars there. And I don't really get why. To me, this has always struck me as it's a card limitation. It's something where they don't want you breaking the game with card lock stuff. I don't really think it matters, honestly. I don't really think it's actually going to stop anyone. And really all it becomes is a really annoying thing where you don't want to accidentally lose it because you used a card after an NP because you maybe didn't do enough damage on like turn 2 or something like that to actually finish your enemy off. So in that regard, I hate these types of skills. There's no reason for me that it couldn't just be again, 3 turn durations on each of these. It's 30% each. That's not crazy. We have plenty of other units out there that have a like sort of multi-steroid skill that's 30% over 3 turns. So I don't know why they gave her the limitation, but they did. So that aspect of her is not good, but it's not detrimental. It's not like she can't be used effectively still in spite of that. Now, on top of that, she does at least get self-evasion for 1 attack 3 turns, and this is all on a very low cooldown here of only 5 turns. So that is not bad. That is actually a really nice thing, especially when you have hard survival. We can maybe say that the issue is that it's only the 1 attack, but at least the 3 turn duration on all of these things means you don't have to choose between staying alive and having your steroid. You can basically use it when you need to, and you should be good because you have that choice. The problem that we have with a lot of the old skills that paired up a steroid with a hard survival skill was that they were only 1 turn, and that caused some issues down the stretch for performance. But in this regard, she's perfectly okay. Now, her second skill here increases her own crit damage for 1 turn by 100%. So that's already a doozy. And then again, remember your primary supports for your quick units are going to be Scotty, who boosts crit damage by 100% for quick cards, and Summer Scotty, who boosts the crit damage for buster cards. So the fact that she has 100% crit up that's not card specific just adds to that even more and means that her crits from her cards are going to be insane if you can manage to land them. And so that's one of the things where I think she'll actually be really good for you in terms of just raw card performance, and doubly so if you're concerned about NP gen. Again, she's quick. She's probably going to be generating a lot of stars. She does have decently high star absorption naturally. So right there, you're going to be soaking a lot of those stars. You're going to be critting very hard with her. And so that actually does really help out her performance. But then on top of this, they do end up giving her a power mon niche here against a brand new niche type in mechanical. Now, again, I've talked to people about this. We've been talking about it before stream here, basically saying that like, yeah, mechanical is not the best translation of this. I think to me, if you look at the units that it applies to, basically, again, I think it might be better to say like man-made or construct, because it's not just all robots. It's basically anything that is non-natural, and in that regard it definitely makes a lot more sense. And you guys can see it does apply to plenty of enemy types as well, particularly the very common assassin and sort of like America type robots and stuff that we end up encountering all the time. So this does actually have some really nice applications. There are some bosses in there too, but I didn't want to show them to you guys for obviously spoiler reasons. But again, there is some really nice stuff that mechanical does cover. And so this is a 3 turn duration here, and it is a 50% steroid. So it's nothing to sneeze at. But considering the 3 turn duration, and if you did lure the skill, you'd have it on a 4 turn cooldown. So you would pretty much almost always have this. You would have 75% uptime on this skill if you managed to lure it. So it's really nice in that regard. If you're going up against any sort of mechanical enemy, yeah, she can definitely go toe to toe with them for quite a while and be able to crit them insanely hard. Then we get to her third skill here. It's party attack for 3 turns. It's basically one of the only things she actually does for the party, as well as recover the party's HP. You guys can see the attack up goes up to 20%. That's not bad. And then the healing is 2,000. So this can definitely be a little bit of a thing here where it can not only help kind of keep her up, but it can also help keep the supports up too. So I actually really like this. Again, we have various other damage dealers out there that kind of do some stuff for the party. that I think it's actually really good that they do. Another example, this would be like Summer Kiara, that again, when she ends up popping her third skill, gives, you know, one turn of dodge to everybody else in the party. And ironically enough, that can be really useful at certain times for keeping a Castoria alive, for keeping a Tamamo up or something like that. So you never know when these sorts of things are actually going to help you out. So I'm always happy to see this, doubly so when it's party wide. So I do think this is a nice skill. And again, it's also on a low cooldown. So that's something that MIXA really has going for her, is not long cooldowns. And that's nice considering Quick doesn't really have that whole cooldown reduction gimmick. The only Quick unit that really does is Maid Alter, basically, and she's a damage dealer herself. Now, looking at her passive skills here, she has existence outside the domain D. It gains 2 critical stars every turn. And again, it increases her own debuff resistance by 4%. She also gets Madness Enhancement C for some additional Buster performance. And then basically ends up having Alt Reactor here as well for debuff resistance of 17.5%. So again, nothing really too amazing here, but it's all nice quality stuff that's going to help her out. Particularly like we talked about, stars per turn, that's just more icing on the cake for a Quick unit. She's just going to have even more, even on like, you know, turns where she maybe didn't get the cards or maybe didn't get her NP off in order to generate a lot of stars. Let's talk append skills here. Now, normally with welfares, you know, in the past, especially for a welfare that hadn't gotten coins given out as part of their event, well, you know, we didn't really need to talk about appends. Now that we know about the whole evocation festival that's going on, it seems to me that you'll eventually get coins for MIXA. So regardless of whether or not they're available on the outset, you can work to them via bond. And again, eventually the evocation festival will probably end up setting her up, and then you'll be able to get coins that way. So I think it is worthy of considering the appends here. Now, looking at the first one here, she's got the extra attack finesse. And again, remember, this increases not just damage, but also NP gen and star gen. So in that regard, yeah, this could actually be a pretty useful one. Doubly so when you know that you're going to be wanting to really focus on her crits. That I think is going to make her really strong. So yeah, definitely having the extra attack finesse here. If you manage to get a nice brave chain, maybe on the back end of an NP, that could be a really powerful thing for you. So I don't think that's a bad one by any stretch of the imagination for her. Then you've got mana loading here, and we're going to talk about this when we get to the actual looping numbers, but I do actually recommend getting mana loading on her for the simple reason that it might allow you to start with a better craft essence, and you'll see why when we talk about that. But again, 20% charge is pretty much always a good thing to have on any unit, so mana loading just has a tendency to be really useful regardless of who it's on. And then her third skill. This is actually one of the rare third skills that's actually good. And that's why I didn't want to just say, hey, get the mana loading first, because for some of you, you might just value the fact that she is a foreigner and you just want to use her to absolutely shut down berserkers as much as possible. So again, the fact that it is actually a class she is effective against and resistant to, yeah, that's actually really nice. You can just get 30% extra damage against berserkers. So that's really good, especially for a welfare to have. Now we get to talk about the Noble Phantasm here. And again, it's a 4-hit quick AoE NP. Pretty straightforward. It just deals damage to all enemies and then deals super effective damage to enemies with evil alignment. So not only is she anti-evil, which is kind of ironic because her berserker form is anti-good, which she is. So they kind of each cover each other. Kind of, because again, she's a foreigner, so she is going to naturally counter her berserker form in that sense. But it is really interesting to see that they're sort of diametrically opposed like that. But not only does she have the evil alignment, but remember, she also has mechanical on top of that. Then she gets an overcharge effect here of up to 20% of increasing her own quick performance that activates before damage goes out. So really, really nice in that regard. That's going to help her refund numbers. That's going to help her star gen, and that's obviously going to help her damage. So now let's go ahead and look at the actual damage numbers here, just so that you guys have an idea. And we actually talked about these during the Hokusai video there, kind of saying that while Hokusai does appear at the bottom of this damage list when it's sorted by NP1, it's not the end of the world. Hokusai is not bad. Hokusai does a lot of really nice stuff over here that allows her to basically end up getting sort of a little bit more, like, you know, bang for your buck if you use her in the right set of circumstances. With MIXA, obviously we normally sort by NP1, but she's a welfare, so you're not looking at that. Instead, you're looking at NP5 because you're guaranteed 5 copies of her as long as you do the event. Do the event, chat. Now, besides that, again, looking at that, it's 33,000 here. And remember, these are just neutral numbers. These are assuming all servants' own buffs are activated on themselves. But still, 33,000 compared against your highest up here at NP1 of the SSRs, Abby at 31. That's not bad. That's right where welfare pretty much should be. Doubly so when you have units like, say, Voyager here that do end up getting attributes that allow Voyager to maybe pop off a little bit more. So I think it's perfectly fine. This is a really balanced unit. And in that regard, MIXA actually hits very hard. A lot of other welfares have a tendency now to land maybe in like the second slot, where there's one really powerful SSR that still sort of outpaces them. She actually just jumps right to the top slot. So that is nice for her. But remember, she also has additional niches that can come into play here. And remember, this is just NP1 over here on the side, which won't be the case with her. So for instance, she has mechanical or evil alignment, and then she has mechanical and evil. So taking a look at this all the way over on the NP5 numbers, you guys can see that's some pretty solid numbers from an AoE from a neutral standpoint. So now imagine if she's actually effective. Yeah, that gets really nice. That gets really hard hitting. And so that's one of the things that I really wanted to point out to you. Well, MIXA's refund numbers aren't great. Her damage actually is. She doesn't have charge anywhere in her kit, but she does still have some nice steroids and some nice survivability, as well as bukus and bukus of crit damage. So in that regard, I think we're okay. Doubly so since, guys, we've pretty much talked about this, especially with Oberon coming into the game soon. It doesn't really matter. As long as a unit can even get 10% charge, you can 3-turn with them really effectively. So given the fact that she is a quick unit, she will be able to refund. So let's talk about that. Let's actually talk about the refund numbers, just so that you guys have some level of idea here. Now, again, I'm going to pull this up on screen. You guys aren't necessarily going to understand it. It's a spreadsheet. I don't blame you. The big thing you guys need to understand is up here is going to be the sort of plotting out that we did here of supports. I asked Bob to run me these numbers basically just so that we'd have an idea. And then down here, you guys can see sort of the assumptions. This is going up against 3 enemies. This is assuming 1 hit of overkill. But again, you guys can see here the estimated refunds. And the numbers that we tried to work with basically are, again, if you can get to that like 30% mark, you're pretty solid. We can come up with something, right? So again, I even asked Bob to throw in a very weird Scotty, so Summer Scotty and Castoria pairing. And you might be thinking, why the hell would you be using a arts unit with a quick unit? Well, Castoria still has 50% charge, and she has a little bit of NP gain in her kit. So even though MIXA has really low hit counts, you guys can still, with a decent support setup, still reach 30%. And I've talked about this before. It's one of the things that I really like to do with regards to figuring out whether or not a unit can loop, is I like to basically bracket it out. So now imagine, if you will, you've got these 2 brackets. This is turn 1, this is turn 2, and this is turn 3. You need 100% charge in each of these brackets in order to be able to 3-turn. In order to be able to move throughout, you need to be able to get 300% charge total. So I call it solving for 300. So the way to think about this is, even in a case of like Summer Scotty and Castoria here, if you can get to 30% charge, then boom, right here, on turn 3 and potentially even turn 2, you can have 30% charge right there coming off the back end of an NP. So assuming that, I like to basically just plug in support. So this is just with 2 of the supports, right? Well, I could have Oberon. That could be a thing. Okay, well, if that's a thing, then I can just plug in Oberon back here. Oberon's worth 70% charge. So as long as I get to that 30% on turn 3, he completes turn 3, because that's now 100% right there. Looking at turn 2 here, we've got to come up with some sort of combination. So let's try to backdoor into this. Well, you know I'm going to have a Summer Scotty there, so maybe I can use her 50% charge. Well, now I'm at 80. So I've got to have some way of getting 20% extra charge. You might be thinking, ooh, Castoria, you could use her 20%. You could. The only problem with that is if you did it in that order, then that would mean basically the NP coming into turn 2 wouldn't have had Castoria's NP gain already. And then that would then mean you wouldn't get exactly the 30% that you needed with one hit of overkill against 3 enemies. So that would be your concern right there. So you would need to do it in a reverse order where you basically use Castoria's 20% on turn 1, and then instead you use her 30% on turn 2. That just means you're at 110% now in turn 2, but either way, that's good as well. So then now consider the fact that, okay, well, you've got Castoria's 20% on turn 1. What else can we do? Well, if you're managing to have her mana loading append unlocked and maxed out, that's another 20% right there. And that means that right there is basically your bar. So you could potentially start MIXA out with a 60% C. And again, there are some good 60% quick C like Knights and Marines. It's an old C. It hasn't been around a lot, but it does have quick up on it. So you might be able to find a way. Doubly so if you manage to actually be able to card at any given point, you might be able to make up for any sort of missing charge if you wanted to start her at like 50% with like Traces of Christmas, something that gives quick up and NP gain. That could be a thing as well. So a lot of this really depends on what you're trying to do. A lot of it really depends on where you want to start. But at bare minimum, you should be able to start with just something like a K-scope here on turn 1. And I know it's not the thing everyone wants to hear. No one wants to hear about A, having to use plug suit, or B, having to start out with a K-scope and full charge. People want to be able to start with that, you know, black grail, or with that like sexy 50% charge CE that allows them to get, you know, a nice steroid on top of that. But at the end of the day, if it gets the job done, if it works for you, it's not bad. And so that's the thing I'm going to point out. Whether or not a unit can loop is often not up for debate. The unit can loop. They just may not loop well. And again, remember the assumption here, and this is an issue I think with a lot of our quick units, is that we're dealing with 3 enemies. So if you have less enemies than that, that can become a problem. One of the things that quick has done to really help address this is to basically end up giving you Summer Scotty. And what Summer Scotty has allowed you to do is not just crit hard with quick cards, but now also with Buster. So you have 2 cards that really work in that regard. And so now we're going to go back here and remind you that MIXA's deck here has 4 cards that in that Summer Scotty / normal Scotty setup can really work for critting. So yeah, her refund numbers might really struggle if you're not up against 3 enemies. But if you're only up against 1 enemy, you have an increased odd of just being able to crit it down. So in that regard, MIXA works out decently well. You are still going to have some weird times with her, some times where she doesn't generate enough Noble Phantasm, or some times where you maybe just don't get the cards on the turn that you want. That is the issue with using quick right now. But it doesn't mean that she's a bad unit. And in fact, again, as we go down the line, I do expect that quick will eventually receive more support options. As it does, she's only going to get better. And in that regard, I think MIXA is definitely someone you don't want to skip. She's a free unit, she hits hard, and again, her looping is probably only going to get better over time. So, let me know what you guys think about MIXA. I'll be interested to read. And how would you fix her if you think that she's not good enough? I'll see you guys for the next video. Have a good one.